Good morning, everybody, and warmly welcome to the fourth day of Stop Hatred Now 2026. My name is Sonja Lindfors. My pronouns are she and her. I am a choreographer and the artistic director of Urbanapa, as well as Stop Hatred Now, and I will be your host for this week. So, what is Stop Hatred Now? Stop Hatred Now is an anti-racist and intersectional feminist platform whose purpose is to create new multi-voice feminist discourse around anti-racism, inclusivity, and diversity within art and culture. It comes with a straightforward proposal: let's strive to stop hatred, oppression, and inequality and work towards inclusion, equity, diversity, and togetherness. The platform is initiated by Urbanapa, but produced in collaboration with 13 other art and cultural organizations, and this is a long list: Gatalustic Culture for All Service, Globe Art Point, Goethe Institute Finland, HIAP, Kiila ry, Miklagård Arts, Nordic Culture Point, the Finnish Art and Culture Agency, the Ministry of Education and Culture, Uni Arts Helsinki, Titanic, and Zodiac Center for New Dance. So even though you cannot see us all, we are actually many. Stop Hatred Now is also supported by a multitude of organizations. We are thankful for your support. And of course, if you want to join our list of supporters, please let us know. We welcome everybody in. So friends, this year Stop Hatred Now turns 11. For more than a decade, this platform has brought together artists, institutions, educators, activists, policymakers, and cultural workers to discuss, share tools, and work towards anti-racism, equity, and structural change within art and culture. And as we all know, there's still loads of work to be done. This year's theme is accountability and care. We're living through a time of polycrisis, and in recent years, the list of urgent crises has only continued to grow. From the climate emergency to the spread of racist, conservative, and nationalist politics and the rise in anti-trans violence, to austerity politics and the ongoing multiple wars included in Iran, Ukraine, and the continuous genocide in Palestine. Many are exhausted, many are lost for hope. To all of you who are struggling, artists, activists, cultural workers, communities, we hear you, we see you. Your exhaustion and frustration are real and valid, and we are trying our best to push for structural change. That is why we also must continue gathering, listening, learning how to work together, defending equity, diversity, inclusivity, and human rights. We defend the right to dream, to experience joy, pleasure, softness, and community, to make, to question, to fail, and to grow. We defend the right to exist in difference across needs, histories, perspectives, and desires. Accountability and care. How do we continue working together during times of exhaustion, conflict, and uncertainty? And how do we build spaces where care is not only discussed, but actually practiced? Accountability is not only about written values or strategies or speeches like this. It is about action, responsibility, and real consequences. The decisions being made right now will shape what kind of artistic futures become possible and for whom. Care requires commitment, reflection, and action. Sometimes care means support and softness. Sometimes it means difficult conversations, repair, and transformation. This year's program brings forth a multitude of different voices, a multitude that oftentimes remains invisible in the Finnish art and cultural field. Artists, activists, educators, cultural workers, scholars, and academics coming from different backgrounds, practices, languages, and knowledges. We hope that this week will lead into concrete tools that will lead into concrete actions. But I also hope that this week will leave you with more questions, because it is good to stay with the question and stay with the trouble. And as we say every year, we cannot do everything, but we can always do something. So before we go on with the schedule, let's go through some housekeeping notes. So this is our 7th webinar, and we will try our very best to make it a great experience for everybody. But in case there are technical difficulties, your comprehensions and patience are appreciated. As an attendee, your participation is a bit limited. You can participate by sending in questions via the Q&A, and via the chat you can keep the conversation going on with our behind-the-scenes team, in this case, Lisa Kolakowski and Tulka Ervasti, when necessary. And we are a small team of 3 here, so unfortunately we might not be able to answer all your questions or comments right away. So again, we ask for your patience. And there is closed captioning by AI available, but you have to enable it from your tool panel yourself. And if you're watching this via the stream, unfortunately, you will not be able to send in questions. So please, please, please come to the webinar in case you want to chat with us. And also please note that this session will be recorded. We have one more request here. If you like it, please show it. So please share the program, tell your friends and colleagues, repost the materials, or then just continue the conversation within your own communities and organizations. So friends, now let's go through today's schedule. We will begin shortly with a pre-recorded keynote by Ali T. Assad titled Neutrality is a Curatorial Choice, a keynote on the role, responsibility, and critical practices in institutions addressing Palestinian struggle. After a short break, we will then continue with another pre-recorded conversation titled Alliance as a Practice, Connecting Artists, Institutions, and Initiatives for Structural Change with Zameli Kairli and Jada Berg-Söderblom. And then we will have a tiny break, after which we will continue into today's live panel discussion, Include/Exclude, Changing Standards in Art Education, with Nemat Batah, Özgü Gundesliolu, and Rafael Bo, moderated by Dash Che. And that will be the end of today's webinar. Then last but not least, let's bear in mind that this is a striving to be anti-racist and intersectional feminist platform. We strive to enable a multi-voice feminist discourse, and this means that we do not aim at consensus. We come from different languages, backgrounds, knowledges, and struggles, and often we are lost in translation. We do not have to agree. There must be space for new viewpoints and experiences, but the atmosphere must also remain respectful and inclusive. So now I will read out loud the Safer Space guidelines, hoping that we can also normalize these simple procedures that can make spaces and places a little bit more accessible. So friends, in order to keep the working environment as safe as possible, we need each other's help. Let's not assume consent, let's ask for it. Let's respect the physical, mental, and emotional boundaries of others as well as our own. Let's not assume the identity, sexuality, gender, health, and background of others. Let's respect the opinions, beliefs, and experiences of others, even when they differ from ours. Let's be aware of our prejudice, privileged behavior in the space we occupy. Let's strive to act with positive intent and take care of each other. No harassment or discrimination whatsoever. No homophobia, transphobia, racism, sexism, ableism, fatphobia, etc. No discrimination based on locality, language, or citizenship. And then let's embrace diversity, complexity, and polyphony. So this is a dream of its own. Please note that violations of guidelines might result in removal from the session, but here I also always want to remind that equity work and diversity work is also about trying and failing. So this work is repetitions, and we will fail every once in a while. Let's take this week as a practice. Also, if we fail in something, please let us know and we'll try to make it better. Is there something else? Nope. Okay. So now I have the pleasure to introduce the first keynote of the day with the title Neutrality is a Curatorial Choice by Ali T. Assad. Ali T. Assad is a researcher, architect, and editor based in Amsterdam. His transdisciplinary practice bridges curatorial research, spatial justice, and critical design pedagogy, treating architecture as culture beyond built form and curating as infrastructural negotiation and critical inquiry. He is editor-in-chief of Makan, and he has also co-founded the Spatial Justice for Palestine Network, a collective of spatial and design practitioners advancing knowledge about Palestine through research, education, and public programming. So, are we ready with the film? Just a moment. No worries at all. And there we go. Please enjoy.
Hello, my name is Ali Assad, and I'm a researcher, an architect, and an editor based in Amsterdam. Before I get to introducing myself through my work today and tomorrow of all days, as the days we commemorate the Palestinian Nakba, the ongoing catastrophe that began in 1948 with the mass displacement of Palestinians and has never in any meaningful sense ended. I will introduce myself with my full name, Ali Talat Ali Assad, the son of my father, a Palestinian Nakba survivor who was born in the coastal city of Jaffa in the early 1940s, and the son of my mother, the daughter of Palestinian Nakba survivors herself, who was born in the city of Nablus not long thereafter. My transdisciplinary practice extends across various appointments and engagements bridging curatorial research, exhibition design, spatial justice, and critical design pedagogy. I am a co-founder of the Spatial Justice for Palestine Network, a collective of spatial and design practitioners advancing spatial knowledge on Palestine through research, through design, education, and public programming in the Dutch context. I'm also editor-in-chief of Makan, Journal of Culture and Space, a trilingual print publication engaging with architecture, urbanism, and critical arts writing from the Swana region. I teach within the Masters of Interior Architecture, Research and Design program at the Piet of Art Institute in Rotterdam, as well as the design department at the Sandberg Institute here in Amsterdam. I am also a doctoral candidate at the University of Amsterdam School for Cultural Analysis, currently completing a dissertation examining Palestinian exhibition making and museum practices. Before I begin, I want to take a moment to thank the organizers of Stop Hatred Now and the curatorial team behind this year's program for the invitation and for the care with which this space has been assembled. To convene under the themes of accountability and care, particularly now, under the conditions we are all witnessing and living through, is not incidental. It is a curatorial choice, one that recognizes that cultural work does not exist outside the world, but is deeply entangled within it. So I want to acknowledge that invitation not simply as a gesture of inclusion, but as an opening, one that carries responsibility for how we choose to inhabit it. I'm speaking here today not from a position of distance to the subject I wish to unpack, but from within a set of overlapping practices as a researcher, as an educator, and as a curatorial worker, and as someone who, working collectively within networks that attempt, however partially, to engage questions of spatial justice in relation to Palestine. In this talk, I move between these positions to think through neutrality not as an abstract concept, but as something that is produced through the infrastructures we work within, and to ask what accountability and care might demand of us now, not as statements, but as practices that reconfigure how we work, who we work with, and what we are willing to risk. I want to begin with a proposition. Neutrality is never an absence. It is not a void one occupies to remain outside politics, but a position that is actively produced, maintained, and performed. Within cultural institutions, neutrality often appears in the guise of care, through the use of measured language, balanced programming, cautious framing. But it is precisely through these gestures that certain realities are made legible, while others are rendered distant, excessive, or unspeakable. As Edward Said reminds us, facts do not speak for themselves, but require a socially acceptable narrative to absorb, sustain, and circulate them. It is precisely through these gestures that certain realities are made legible through carefully moderated panels, crafted statements, the preference for both sides, while others are rendered distant or excessive. They're reduced to tone, stripped of urgency, or excluded altogether. Neutrality here does not simply hold space, it filters it. It sets the terms of what can be seen, heard, and recognized as credible, allowing some experiences to appear as complexity or nuance, while casting others as improper, emotional, or unspeakable. I extend that proposition. Neutrality is not an absence, but rather a claim, one that institutions repeatedly make about themselves. Museums, exhibitions, and universities present themselves as spaces of openness, of plurality, of careful balance. But these gestures do not emerge in a vacuum. They are produced, rehearsed, and defended, especially at moments of crisis. We are witnessing one such moment now. As a cultural worker and as a human being who has been raised and based in a multiplicity of localities, I must express my solidarity with all people subject to rising forms of systemic oppression, inequality, and erasure. In Palestine, in Sudan, in Myanmar, in Lebanon, in Iran, in Cameroon, in Congo, in Cuba, in Kashmir, in Mozambique, in Ukraine, in Venezuela, and too many other places to adequately list here. This is the world we are all living in, and the context we all work in. This talk proceeds from that tension, that neutrality is a claim. It asks, or rather I ask, what does neutrality do, materially and discursively, within the spaces we inhabit as curators, as educators and cultural workers? And how might we begin to reposition ourselves, not outside institutions, but within and against their limits, towards forms of practice that take responsibility for the conditions they engage in and the conditions they exist in? To interrogate neutrality, then, is to ask, how do institutions manage visibility and accountability under conditions of violence? What does it mean to curate carefully while a genocide unfolds? What does it mean to contextualize when context itself becomes the site of erasure? When histories are selectively framed, when timelines are truncated and structural conditions reduced to background, such that the very terms meant to explain instead dilute, defer, or displace responsibility? What does it mean to exercise neutrality when your practice, your tools, and your agency is embedded in circuits of capital and exchange that contribute towards injustice? Neutrality is not only a discursive position, it is infrastructural. It is embedded in funding structures and governance models, editorial policies, and curatorial frameworks. It is codified through a language of standards that cultural institutions and universities employ: professionalism, balance, objectivity, and, as I mentioned, gestures of care. These standards are rarely neutral themselves. They are historically produced, often shaped through colonial, Eurocentric, and depoliticizing logics that determine what counts as legitimate knowledge or acceptable discourse. Tomorrow, May 15th, marks 78 years since the Nakba. Not an event sealed in 1948, but a continuous unmaking. A catastrophe that does not recede into history, but persists in the present tense, unfolding through each act of erasure, each displacement, each life held in suspension between survival and loss. Today also marks day 950 of Israel's assault on Gaza, which has now been widely described by legal scholars, human rights organizations, and an increasing number of states as genocidal in scale and intent. These temporalities are not separate. They are continuous. The present violence is not an exception. It is an intensification. The more acute the violence becomes in Gaza, the more besieged and violently dispossessed Palestinians in the West Bank are made through raids, arrests, land seizures, and the steady expansion of settlements. The more Israel extends its colonial reach across West Asia through military occupation and widespread destruction of homes and lives, the more the media and our museums and our galleries and our universities retreat into careful language. Talking about Palestine has become a site where the language of standards is both tested and enforced. Exhibitions are framed cautiously, statements are hedged, and the language is diluted. Urgency is deferred in favor of contextualization and dialogue. Outrage is softened into concern. Asymmetry is reframed as complexity. What emerges is a pattern. The more acute the violence, the more careful the institution becomes, as though care must be exercised not towards those subjected to violence, but towards the institution's own perceived reputation. its misguided sense of stability. What we witness is not neutrality, but a standardization of distance. It is a regulated mode of speech that manages risk and pretends to preserve legitimacy. In doing so, it normalizes the very conditions it claims to neutrally describe. Neutrality in the context of genocide, ethnic cleansing, and the ongoing disregard for human life, let alone international law, whatever that is taken to mean these days, functions as a regulatory mechanism. It sets the threshold of what can be said without consequence. And in doing so, it protects the institution, not those subjected to violence, or those who feel it is their responsibility to speak up against it, and who risk something to do so. Risk, according to Anna Adam, founder of the School of Disobedience in Budapest, is not supported in the space of the institution. It is harvested. When institutions say take risks, what they mean is take them for us. The institution stays stable or protected, while the artist or the cultural worker absorbs the uncertainty. In this context of manufactured, claimed neutrality, risk is celebrated symbolically, but outsourced materially. In many institutional contexts, or at the very least the ones I have encountered myself, Palestine appears through fragments. Images of destruction, romanticizing Palestinian resilience, calls for dialogue, inviting speakers as gestures of solidarity. But it is often, if not always, detached from addressing any of the structural conditions that produce them. As Susan Sontag observes, to photograph is to frame, and to frame is to exclude. But why does the world continue to romanticize the idea of existing in the face of unspeakable violence instead of naming that violence, doing what you can to stop it? As Saad Amri writes, Palestinians have become experts at surviving what should not be survived. This disassociation and fragmentation is not incidental. It is the very function of neutrality. By isolating events from their histories, the experiences from political contexts, and not naming what should be named, institutions maintain an appearance of engagement while avoiding confrontation, while shielding themselves from scrutiny and accountability. Avoiding the conversation is not a benign act, but an act of complicity with its conditions. To understand neutrality, then, is to interrogate its implications and to shift the question of our engagement from individual intention to systemic infrastructural operation. It is not about what we choose to say or how we strategically mobilize the distributed leverage embedded in our daily decisions, in the juries we sit on, the briefs we construct, and the collaborations we accept or reject. It is also about the conditions that shape what can be said at all. Our task, then, is not only to critique these standards, but to recognize how we participate in their reproduction, even as we attempt to resist them. Avoiding the conversation is not a benign act, but an act of complicity with its conditions. To understand neutrality, then, is to interrogate its implications, to shift the question of our engagement from individual intention to systemic infrastructural operation. It is not only about what we choose to say, or how we strategically mobilize the distributed leverage embedded in our daily decisions, in the juries we sit on, in the briefs we construct, in the collaborations we accept or reject. It is also about the conditions that shape what can be said at all. Our task, then, is not only to critique these standards, but to recognize how we participate in their reproduction, even as we attempt to resist them. And for that, I'll turn my attention to the notion of accountability and of care. Accountability is often invoked within institutions as a matter of response. Statements are issued, positions clarified, commitments made. But if neutrality is structural, then accountability cannot remain at the level of discourse. It must be understood as a practice that reconfigures how institutions operate, not just how they speak. This involves difficult questions. Who are accountable to whom? What risks are institutions willing to take? And what forms of redistribution, of visibility, of resources, of decision-making power are required to make accountability meaningful? When speaking of Palestine, accountability might mean refusing equivalence where asymmetry is evident by naming it. It might be about prioritizing voices and narratives that are systemically marginalized. It might also mean recognizing their own complicity, how institutions are entangled within broader political and economic systems that sustain the very conditions they seek to address. It cannot remain at the level of statements, nor can it be reduced to symbolic gestures. Accountability, then, is not a fixed endpoint, but it's an ongoing negotiation. It is not a position one declares, it is a condition one enters. It requires risk. It requires institutions to move beyond preservation of reputation, of funding, of stability, and towards transformation. It demands that institutions confront their own complicity, their entanglement in global networks of extraction and exploitation, in state crimes, in the circulation of misinformation, the obfuscation of facts. It requires sustained engagement, openness to critique, and a willingness to transform institutional norms. It is less about resolution than about remaining in relation, being ready and equipped with the strength, with the knowledge, and the solidarity to face the consequences of speaking truth to power. If accountability names a form of responsibility, care offers a way of practicing it. But do not mistake care here for how it is too often invoked within institutions, as a softening gesture. Care is not a retreat into safety. It is a commitment to staying with difficulty, to remain in it, to confront it, to attend to what is at stake and to whom. As Bell Hooks reminds us, care is a dimension of love, but simply giving care doesn't mean we are loving. As a curatorial method, care involves rethinking how we work together, how we show up for and protect one another, how decisions are made, how knowledge is shared, and how relationships are sustained over time. It asks us to consider not only the outcomes of our work, but the processes through which it is produced. Care is not neutrality, it is alignment. It is the form of solidarity that is not symbolic, but material. Supporting networks, supporting infrastructures, amplifying voices without extraction, and creating conditions for sustained engagement rather than episodic attention. It also involves an infrastructure of care within and across institutions, building alliances, navigating constraints collectively, and finding ways to act even when within the limited spaces we are afforded. Care asks us to remain accountable to those we work with, not to the abstract public, but to specific communities, to histories and conditions, and more than anyone, to our counterparts, our fellow artists, thinkers, and cultural producers in Gaza, in the whole of Palestine, and so many other locations around the global south, whose life's work has not been only to create, but to document, to archive, and reassemble what has been stolen, appropriated, or altogether destroyed. In Ariella Azoulay's words, the regime has made us into spectators. It trained us to look at those others as if their destruction was not our concern. Ultimately, care is not separate from critique. It is what allows critique to be sustained. It is a practice of endurance, of refusal, and a collective orientation towards different futures. Care without accountability risks becoming aesthetic. Care without accountability would be better relegated to a plinth or a glass display case or projected on a screen in a gallery. Care cannot tend to the wound while leaving the blade that pierced it in place. It is about participating in the conditions that make healing possible. And that begins with doing what you can to wrench the blade free. To interrogate neutrality is not to arrive at a stable alternative, but to unsettle the ground on which we collectively stand. It is to reorganize and recognize that our positions as curators, educators, and practitioners are never external to the conditions we engage in. We are not outside the institution, we are of it, within it, and sustained by it. And so the question is not that whether we are implicated, but how. Neutrality is not a failure of positioning. It is a position in itself. It is a curatorial choice, an institutional choice, a pedagogical choice. It is actively produced, carefully maintained, and repeatedly defended. It stabilizes certain narratives while displacing others. It renders asymmetries as complexity and violence as something to be contextualized, rather than named and confronted. It sets the limits of what can be said, what can be shown, and what can be risked. When talking about Palestine or choosing not to talk about Palestine, neutrality reveals itself with particular clarity. The institutional claim to remain neutral does not suspend politics. It does not suspend the Israeli occupation, Palestinian displacement, dispossession, and erasure, and the ongoing genocide in Gaza. It does not stop the escalating regional violence and colonial expansion across West Asia, or the deepening infrastructures of imperial violence and extraction that are coming with it. Your neutrality does not produce balance. It produces distance. It produces silence. And that silence is not passive. It is in alignment with the continuation of what it refuses to name. But if neutrality is a choice, then so too is refusal. Refusal to dilute language when clarity is required. Refusal to produce equivalence where there is asymmetry. In London, activists from Youth Demand intervened directly within the National Gallery in October 2023. They placed an image of a Palestinian mother and child from Gaza over Picasso's Motherhood. This was not an act against the work itself, but an act of refusal against the institutional frame that allowed certain forms of suffering to remain abstract. A refusal to aestheticize suffering while maintaining the conditions that produce it. But refusal alone is not enough. The work then is not only to reject neutrality, but to reposition practice. To ask, what does it mean to curate, to teach, to practice, or to learn under conditions where representation in itself is contested? What does it mean to produce knowledge within infrastructures that regulate visibility? What does it mean to act, knowing that every gesture, every inclusion, every omission carries consequence? This requires risk, and not symbolic risk, but material risk, to institutional standing, to professional security. It requires institutions to move beyond self-preservation towards transformation, towards forms of practice accountable not to abstract publics, but to specific conditions, histories, and communities. Because what is being preserved in the name of neutrality is no longer holding. It is no longer serving you. Museums and cultural spaces around the world are losing their audiences. Universities and academies are losing their students. Neutrality is no longer stabilizing institutions. It is becoming the ground for dissent directed at them. It is turning them into sites of disciplinary and legal enforcement, where immense resources are spent policing speech and punishing cultural workers, students, and faculties who refuse silence, all in the name of not disturbing the peace. This is not sustainable. To remain within existing structures without altering them is not neutrality. It is reproduction. And yet, this is not a call for purity. There is no outside from which to act cleanly. There is only the ongoing negotiation of how to work within and against and beyond the limits we inherit. In Amsterdam, as in many other cities, these limits have already been tested. At the University of Amsterdam, student encampments in 2024 emerged not simply as a form of protest, but as a direct challenge to the institution's claim to neutrality, exposing the material entanglements between the university, corporate funding, and the ongoing violence. These encampments did more than demand statements. They demanded disclosure, divestment, and accountability. They transformed the campus itself into a contested space, where the terms of visibility, legitimacy, and belonging were no longer set solely by the institution. And what they revealed in turn is how quickly neutrality gives way to enforcement. Evictions, suspensions, disciplinary measures followed, and demonstrating that neutrality is not the absence of force, but one of its conditions. The encampments made visible what is often kept implicit, that the limits of the institution are not fixed, but actively produced. And in doing so, they also expanded those limits, however temporarily, creating openings in which other forms of assembly, speech, and solidarity could take shape. am compelled to quote Fred Moten and Stefano Harney here. And I'll say that the only relationship to the university today is a criminal one. So the question is not whether institutions are already implicated. They are. Through what they fund, what they platform, what they soften, what they refuse, and what they allow to pass without remark. The question is how they choose to continue to position themselves within this condition, what they align with, what they refuse, and what they are willing to police or risk in order to act otherwise. The cost of neutrality might feel high right now, but I promise you, it will not be measured by what is risked now. It will be measured by what is lost by refusing to act. Exhibitions and classrooms are not neutral spaces. They never have been. Exhibitions and classrooms are not neutral spaces. They never have been. They are sites where worlds are assembled, where realities are ordered and made legible, where futures are not only imagined, but rehearsed. To curate, to teach, to learn is to take a position, whether declared or disavowed. This has long been understood within Palestinian cultural practice and education, not as theory, but as necessity. Under conditions where land, movement, and political expression are systemically constrained, exhibition making and popular education becomes a vital terrain through which presence is asserted. Memory is held, and futures are insisted upon. It is not supplementary to struggle, it is a part of it. So I return to this moment of commemoration. On this day marking 78 years since the beginning of the Nakba, on day 950 of the ongoing genocide in Gaza, I extend an invitation to each and every one of you to remain attentive to how language operates, to remain accountable for the positions you inhabit, and to continue the work of rethinking what it means to practice within, against, and beyond the institution under such conditions. I will end with words that are not my own, but those of Palestinian poet, writer, and researcher Abdel-Latif Aql from a curatorial statement written for a Palestinian exhibition in 1986. In its spatial dimension of the homeland, in its temporal dimension of culture, in its demographic dimension of humanity, visitors to this exhibition will find in the work of these artists, as I have found, a wonderful aesthetic realm in resistance to the world imposed upon us. They are reshaping this world in the global colors that will one day be. Thank you for listening.
Wow, thank you so much, Aliti Assad. And again, a reminder for everybody that these videos will remain in our website, stophatrednow.fi. So please share them with your colleagues, your friends, so we get these important messages disseminated. So friends, now we'll take a tiny 5-minute technical break, after which we will continue with the next panel, next discussion with the title, Alliance as Practice Connecting Artists, Institutions, and Initiatives for Structural Change. So we'll see you in a tiny bit. Good morning, everybody, and welcome back. Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the fourth day of Stop Hatred Now 2026. My name is Sonia Lindfors, my pronouns are she and her, and I am your host for this week. So, friends, now we will continue with a pre-recorded conversations titled Alliance as Practice, Connecting Artists, Institutions, and Initiatives for Structural Change with Jada Berk Söderblom and Zameli Kairli. And this video is also pre-recorded. Okay, so let's continue. Are we ready here?
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this session as part of the 2026 edition of Stop Hatred Now. My name is Ceyda Berk Söderblom. I'm a transborder cultural professional working with post-national knowledge, power, social, environmental, and democratic justice. I'm a woman with dark brown curly hair and fair skin, and today I'm wearing a dark green jacket and my glasses. And I'm very happy to host today's session on alliance building, cultural solidarity, and structural change in the arts sector. I think this session arrives at a particularly urgent moment. Across Europe and beyond many other places, we are witnessing growing polarization, shrinking civic space, attacks on cultural freedom, and increasing pressure on artists, cultural workers, and institutions working with questions of justice, equity, anti-racism, and representation. In that context, the question of alliances becomes not only relevant but necessary. Based in Vienna, Austria, The Arts is a network and project office for diversity, working with more than 90 member associations and cultural institutions across the arts sector, connecting artists, initiatives, institutions, and activist perspectives to support structural change and discrimination-critical cultural practice. And we will today explore alliance work not only as an idea, but as an ongoing practice. How collective structures are built, sustained, negotiated, and challenged across diverse cultural contexts and communities. So it's now my great pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Zameli Kairli. Good morning. Hi, Zameli.
Hi.
Nice to have you here. And we are recording this session, of course, in the morning, so I would like to say good morning to you. Zameli, a Vienna-based art historian, cultural worker, and managing director of The Arts, whose work focuses on community building, participatory cultural practices, and creating space for marginalized perspectives within cultural institutions. And our session will begin with a presentation by Zameli and followed by a conversation moderated by me. So we are very happy to have you with us today, Zameli, and thank you for joining us. And floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning. Heia kiitos kutsusta. I hope I pronounced it correctly. Thank you for the invitation, dear Jada. Thank you for this beautiful introduction. And thank you to the organizers of the festival, Sonia, Keme, Mikol, Lisa, at least the people who I have already got to know. And I'm very, very glad to be here. And I'm also very much looking forward to the presentation afterwards. So I will start to share the presentation. So as you have already said, The Arts is a project office driving structural change in Austria's cultural sector. Here, discussions about diversity and culture have become more visible, but visibility and structural participation are still very far apart. In Vienna, around 35% of the population has a migration background. At the same time, cultural institutions remained overwhelmingly white in their teams, in their leadership, in their programs, and in their audiences. And this is not accidental. It's systematically produced. And this is deeply shaped by structural and institutional racism, affecting migrants, racialized communities, and people from working class backgrounds in very concrete ways. Often, the response to these inequalities focuses on visibility. Who is invited, who is represented, who appears on stage or in programs. But inclusion does not begin when someone appears on a stage or in a program. It begins with the conditions under which people can act, decide, and shape institutions. Because institutions are not neutral spaces. These conditions influence which stories are told, which perspectives are recognized, and which realities remain marginalized. So for us, the question is not simply how to include more people within existing systems, but how to change the way the systems themselves operate. This means understanding inclusion not as an add-on, but as a long-term process of structural transformation. And this is where our work begins. D-Arts emerged from a group of cultural workers and artists, Ivana Pilic, Sherry Avraham, and Susanna Ernst, who in 2020 initiated a policy working group, engaging other experts, building on existing networks, knowledge, and experiences across the cultural field. It was clear from the start that the structural discrimination cannot be addressed individually and cannot be solved by adding more programs or projects. For over a year, much of this work happened in the back meetings, exchanges, and collective organizing that remained largely invisible. At the same time, Fake Office emerged from this process, staging an institution that did not yet exist in order to make a very real gap visible, a gap in the Austrian cultural sector, that is, the absence of structure that could address discrimination and inequality collectively across institutions. Through public events and formats, this fake office began to operate as if it already existed, creating visibility, building networks, and testing what such a structure could be. And one of its events was Dissonant Counterpoint. And for me, it was actually my first encounter with the arts. At the time, I was working as a journalist for a local art platform focused on art by and for communities. And if you look at the images from that event, nothing looks like this. It's the Wien Musikverein, the one hosting the New Year celebration, a highly established, resource-rich institution. The setting is prestigious, everything looks polished. But what was happening there was different. The point was not access. The point was, what do we do with these spaces? How do we take a space like this with all its history, power, and resources and use it in our own terms? How do we create a space for discussion and practice between actors with very unequal resources, but without reproducing those inequalities? I felt myself pretty much addressed at that, and not only as an audience to be included, but as someone who is part of the question. And from there, I stayed closely connected to the arts, first as part of a member platform I was working with, and later through collective and initiatives that also joined the network. Until this March, when after an interview process, I was invited to take on the role of managing director. Over 2 years, this process grew into a network of artists, activists, and institutions. And in 2023, D-Arts was formally founded as an association. Today, it connects 93 members across Austria. What emerged from this process was not a single institution, but a network. that connects artists, initiatives, and cultural organizations across Austria through a shared commitment to discrimination critical practice. To make the network is organized in 3 circles. At the center are activist members, artists, collectives, and smaller initiatives, often working under precarious conditions and facing structural exclusion in the cultural field. The second circle includes institutions with a clear discrimination critical focus, organizations that already integrate these perspectives into their structures and programs. And the third circle consists of allied institutions, often larger institutions and organizations that are willing to engage in this process and take responsibility within it. Individuals can also be part of the network as supporters, so membership is not limited to organizations. This structure ensures that different positions within the field are structurally involved in shaping the work. And this is reflected in the governance. The board consists of 6 members with representatives selected by their respective circles. The curatorial team develops the programmatic direction and holds political and conceptual framework of the work. And the advisory board contributes additional expertise and supports long-term development. And the management connects levels in daily practice, and right now it's me. Together, we work to transform the cultural landscape in Austria by actively addressing and dismantling discrimination and structural in the sector. At the core of our work are 2 inseparable dimensions. First, centering marginalized knowledge. The experiences of artists and cultural workers affected by discrimination are treated as a central knowledge and embedded into decision-making and curatorial processes. Second, addressing structural inequality. This means working on the conditions that determine who gets to speak, who is heard, and who can shape decisions. Our political orientation is grounded in a critical understanding of diversity, centered on those who remain underrepresented in cultural production. Discrimination critical practice, recognizing that structural change within institutions is necessary for broader societal change. Decentralized strategies, acknowledging that knowledge often emerges at the margins in precarious and excluded contexts, and dialogical approaches, connecting centers and margins to enable meaningful transformation. And this starts with building a space where different actors can work on structural questions together over time. 3 to 4 times a year, 93 member organizations come together to work on a specific field or concrete issue related to diversity and discrimination. Each cycle builds on the previous one, so over time this creates continuity, common approaches, shared language, and concrete strategies. And this works across the country in other cities like D-Art connects Linz, and branches with cultural workers in Salzburg, for instance. It is participatory, but it's structured. We define the focus, we design the process, and then we bring it into the network to work on it collectively. This process becomes concrete when shared principles are translated into institutional responsibilities. And since 2024, we have been developing a collective code of conduct together with all members, with the goal of implementing it across the network by 2027. The process is guided by 4 principles: centering marginalized knowledge, reducing institutional inequalities, making knowledge accessible, and fair distribution. The code of conduct instead of simply saying we value diversity, institutions are asked to define how marginalized perspectives shape decision-making, how resources are redistributed, and how accountability is implemented. And they also define clear boundaries. Discrimination, abuse of power, and instrumentalization of marginalized perspectives are not tolerated. And importantly, it's connected to support structures. So here, the arts can act as a confidential call point for artists and cultural workers, offering mediation and support where possible. The action plan is currently being developed in working groups across the network. One working group, for instance, focuses on decision-making structures, and its outputs include identify choice points where bias enters decisions, calling cards that can be used directly in selection process by juries. Another outcome will be a shared set of practices, guidelines, case studies, reflections, and artistic contributions. And from 2027 onwards, joining the network means committing to this code through concrete measures. Another structural question is who gets recognized, invited, and paid as an expert within the cultural field. Many institutions still rely on a very limited circle of voices, which reproduces exclusion and also tokenization. In response, we began building our own infrastructure of experts. This includes a network of artists, curators, facilitators, working from discrimination critical perspectives. Since 2023, we have offered consultancy and coaching formats, and in 2025 launched a peer-to-peer program to train new consultants. This is especially focused on practitioners who are rarely recognized as experts within institutional contexts. And this is actually genuinely what we are proud of, as you can have a pool of experts and consultants right now on our website, and institutions can book them for workshops and consultation. It's paid work and a clear professional positioning. And we celebrated this moment in 2024 with the launch of the website review and the and their work. And not all structural change happens through internal frameworks. It also needs public cultural space. With Spot on Film, we work at the intersection of film, culture, and termination critical practice. At festivals such as the Diagonale, this opens up spaces to engage practitioners directly with concrete questions. When and how does discrimination shape film culture, and what needs to change structurally? Trust and communication are essential in our work, and they grew in relationships over time. We value and create informal, intentional spaces for exchange, support, and connection. At Deep Listening, for example, we explored listening as a practice that shapes how we relate and respond to one another. Garden Community Gathering brought together BIPOC and queer communities to explore food sovereignty and community building as pathway towards liberation. And community building also means celebration. With Hybrid Beats Open Air Festival in 2023, we explored and translated the multi-layered aesthetics of translocal spaces in Vienna's Brigitte Now into performative and musical formats. In 2024, we hosted a performative dinner where participants worked with listening, speaking, and sensing. We asked, how can dissenting voices become so present that they can no longer be ignored? How can listening help us recognize and understand discrimination? And how can we make the plurality of voices in one society equally audible? Last year, we organized Translocal Alliances, where we had the pleasure of welcoming you and Sonia Lingford. Across 2 days, we created spaces for collective reflection, workshops, listening practices, shared meals, and exchange between local and international participants. All our events are open and free, accessible to anyone who wants to join. These formats are part of how structural change happens in practice. They create space for trust, imagination, and collective energy to grow. At the same time, they are spaces of presence. They are also moments where we can share joy, celebrate what we have achieved, and simply be together. We do also extend our work beyond our network through targeted collaborations with external partners. For example, we work with the International Screen Institute, where we support 3 full scholarships for the Sustainability Management program. And the course itself is open to everyone, but it comes with a participation fee. So these scholarships helps reduce that financial barrier, and they are specifically aimed at BIPOC and post-migrant practitioners based in Austria. And of course, this work is not only about achievements and transformation. It also involves ongoing tensions. Artists and cultural workers, particularly BIPOC and post-migrant practitioners, continue to experience unequal conditions in access, contracts, expectations, and everyday collaboration with big institutions. Even when programming teams are committed, this does not automatically extend across the entire institution, especially in production contexts. BIPOC artists still face racism and structural hierarchies. We step in when people reached out to us through mediation and support and communication processes. At the same time, we are aware of internal power imbalances within the network itself. In this role, I am learning that structural change means staying with these contradictions over time. And DArts operates within public funding structures. It's a challenge in itself, being dependent on the very system we critically address. This becomes visible, for example, when responding to funding affecting organizations like Zara, which documents racist incidents and online hate. Or when raising questions around transparency in their decision-making. For instance, in the case of Schauspielhaus, where the current artistic leadership, which has been part of DArts from the beginning, was not extended by the city councilor for culture. Taking a public position always means deciding which forms of intervention are meaningful in a given moment, while also recognizing our own limited capacities with 2 part-time staff members and the curatorial team and board work freelance-based. And very important for us is to be clear about our response to political urgencies. As an organization, we do not issue statements, but we don't want silence to become passivity. And we raise questions. What does it mean to work with that silence? What can we do when artists and cultural workers in our network are directly affected? Our one response is through curatorial and activist formats. For example, Banquet Républicain, where artists and activists took the space themselves, bringing their positions, urgencies, and form of expression into the program. The activist circle also developed a big series, while the first gathering, Present Internal Collective, responded to shared experiences of pressure and fragmentation among activists. The second public intervention communication will move into public space and bring together collectives and cultural workers affected by shrinking infrastructures and funding cuts. It will be in 2 weeks. With this, we try to address these conditions not as isolated experiences, but as shared structural realities. From the very beginning, 2 questions have been done through everything we do. When we say we, and how do we across very different conditions, without pretending those differences aren't there. We are not trying to build something homogeneous. What we are building is an alliance that can hold complexity, disagreement, and uneven positions, and still stay in relation. And ongoing, and again and again, there are a lot of issues and challenges in the midst of political radicalization, social polarization, and economical precarity. We still manage to stay motivated by not forgetting our wins and by learning to enjoy the process. Our formats, trainings, workshops, and panels are not only space of critique, they are also energy-giving spaces, places to connect and share, to show solidarity and support each other, to practice imagination and to build friendships. Thank you for your attention. Kiitos paljon. Yesterday I checked how to pronounce it correctly. I'm very much looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you very much, Amelie, for this very insightful presentation and all these beautiful photos and everything that you told us. Actually, it feels like a kind of a blueprint. Then you can take all the challenges, problems, structural difficulties that you elaborated on in Austria and also possible solutions and apply it to many different contexts, including Finland. So you also shared not only the work of the arts, but also the complexities, tensions, and possibilities, mostly starting from the imagination, which I believe is the main ground on alliances across different cultural realities and institutional structures are built. When I was listening to you, I kept thinking about how alliance building is never only, of course, in a basic organizational work, but it's also very much emotional labor, relational, and deeply political work that you also referred to a couple of times. So with that in mind, I would like to continue with a few questions that connect to some of the themes you raised in your presentation. And let's start with the first one, especially considering the number of the members that you have and also their different realities. I would like to ask one specific question about relationship between these two different worlds. So how do you balance, for instance, a more horizontal, bottom-up working culture with a more institutionalized structures within the network? How do you make really a space for different voices and experiences?
Thank you. It's a most complicated question and the most complex question. And you have said blueprint we can apply, but it's also, as you said, emotional labor. And you can't try to apply, you can learn from what you have already experienced, but still you can face and be completely frustrated. So when the policy group was working and thinking what kind of structure they can make, they were also testing exactly like bringing these institutions, but also smaller collectives or individuals together. And power imbalances is here, and we are aware of it. So first of all, it's just like, do not pretend it's not there. Then the second was that the structure itself is also was the first circle when I showed you, it was the activist circle. So members and member organization, they have to apply for membership through letter of intent, where it's once again emphasized that this is the central circle and this knowledge is actually what will be prioritized. But sometimes it's also the question where you centralize decision making, because we can be like democratic and coming together, but as I said, for network and practice, we actually structure and pre-design the formats. So as the curatorial team, as the board team, we come together and we talk and we centralize and we take, because at the end, we are also who is responsible for operation, who is accountable then what is not will not go well. So we design and we bring it up, and in some decision making and doing it ourselves. But the board itself also, it's like in the board 6 members and 2 members from respective circles. So it's still like reflected in the government asymmetric. We all embed structure how the decisions are made.
Thank you very much. Maybe connecting to what you said about power could be an entry point to my second question, because it's everything starts and ends with power. And when you think about this kind of big network bringing in different perspectives and ways of working, the question of power, of course, sits at the center. And how do you see this power exercise shared in the spaces that you create? I mean, which kind of challenges arise in your practical work with your member organizations in the network? What do you do when you see a kind of imbalance, power or power imbalance more visible in that specific moment? So what are the actions you take?
Here, it's also something very important to say, that the member organizations, we call them organizations, we have their logos, but at the end it's people who are coming. And here we are proud of our work, but we also have to be honest that the representatives of the institutions, they're actually the most committed people. And not like every time we have our network and practice, the director or the CEO of Burgtheater, for instance, is coming, or Volkstheater. So usually network and practice, the people who are coming, they're the ones who are the most committed to the processes. And that's why in communication, in this kind of exchange, you will not see it, because there it's exactly this wish and dedication to the processes. What I had already also said, that it's not the same when the artists and activists are coming into their institution, not in our events, but when they are collaborating, when they got contract, when they are asked to perform, and they are coming to the institution, then for sure they will be kind of, okay, actually what the arts was staying for, what these people, what these curators were actually committing, and why they invited us there, but it's not on the place. And here is exactly like when they think they can handle on their own, or sometimes they think, okay, actually these processes should have a mediation, and they can reach us and ask us for help. But yeah, so in our spaces, we mostly don't have like this situation where representative of institutions would be completely like exercising, let us put this power on other people. But it's sure like still the representative institutions, they have backup, but they have knowledge, and then they can also just be also kind of human and say, hey, actually, I would also like to have this, but it's not possible in our institution. Like kind of saying it in advance or something like this. Also, they also face challenges sometimes within one team. They can be like having different forces. Like some people are committed to changes, the other people would say, actually, our society is built on these privileges. Once we don't have them, we can lose our positions. It's not something we want. And yeah, it's also like pretty much built circle that is coming to our events from institutions. But we are trying to invite and also to talk to representatives and say, hey, this time, the next time, you should bring someone from technical team. We give you knowledge, you spread the knowledge in the organization, but still we want these people to come as well. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think this is a very good approach because you already mentioned how the arts as an idea started. I think it started with a wonderful imagination, as if there is another institution exists, and maybe you are just opening up your doors and giving people this another possibility in practice in intangible means. So it's also very much long-term work, and I very much hope that everyone that is committed to your work and joining from different institutions will be able to take this work to their own organizations in daily practice. But this also brings a connection to the accountability you mentioned in your presentation a lot, and organizations that aim to be a part of the arts network, they should also commit to code of conduct, right? You mentioned. And how do you see this accountability? What is your experience through the arts as you as an individual practitioner, especially in the publicly funded organizations? What works in practice, and where do you see these limitations coming on the surface?
Yeah, it's actually the process where we are speculating a lot, because only when a concrete contradiction happens, then we can navigate through it, mediate, and think, oh, okay, this is how accountability happens, how these responsibilities are happen. But it's not so much cases that we can also assess, and then we're also not like the structure that would just assess the program. So for instance, we also do have our limits, and we don't respond to program, even if we see sometimes that the program or like the posters in the city, they're completely like bullshit and absolutely wrong. We would not intervene. So because with limited resources, it's very important for us just to know our own limits, and we act only when people reach us out. When someone from the institution reaches out and say, hey, the piece is problematic and I'm part of this piece, I don't want to play in it because it's actually reproducing and re-traumatizing, then we will help, we will mediate, and then we can ask for meetings, we can write a letter where we can like try to put everything what is happening. Then we can ask the institution for meetups, and then we'll see. But it's not like there is no template, and unfortunately there is also not a concrete action plan, because sometimes people, they want accountability and responsibility from institutions, but they also want to stay anonymous. And then how can we deal with it? So for instance, for now in Code of Conduct, we will not work with anonymous requests. It's unfortunate, and we do understand that it's actually exactly the problem, that people are in conflict interest. They don't want to go straight to the institution, but then they still want to raise the issue. But it's also for us, instead of being everywhere and trying to put these phrases like, oh, we are request, we will instead just focus on concrete cases. And for this step, the first step of code of conduct, it's possible only when the request we get are not anonymous. So it's like when we are talking about institutions treating the staff or treating the activist artists, marginalized communities. But it's also, as I said, the programs. We don't call out their program. it's also like for us to be clear what we are doing, what we are not doing. And also in membership process, when they apply, we don't look through their program and assess their program, their curatorial work. What we do is assess their willingness and commitment to work on anti-discrimination processes in the institution.
Thank you. And I could imagine that through this work and ongoing negotiation and relationship, you hope that the change and transformation will happen within the organization. And maybe one small question about the definition you already mentioned in your presentation is discrimination critical work. So what do you understand in the arts context? What do you mean by that specifically? What is your understanding of discrimination critical cultural work?
It's everything that creates the barriers for people who historically didn't have an access. So here, for sure, we can talk about, because I also said marginalized voices, but they never defined, because we try to be as inclusive as possible by saying that limited access can be through gender, through migration backgrounds, through class, and through physical abilities. But we also are coming, like the whole office is coming from anti-racism, and this experience of racism that is actually is so embedded and so kind of reproducing itself and infecting the whole structures that they then kind of interconnected with the migration background. They're interconnected then with your class, because it's really hard to get, when you don't have chances, it's very hard to build any like financial substantial. So we try to work on the broader understanding of discrimination, critical perspectives, and we are also planning to work on it with digital inclusion, and because it's also like now the half of the work is common or biases and everything that is reproduced in virtual spaces. But our mostly like the strongest focus and background and experience is anti-racism.
Thank you very much. Maybe I would like to continue another question, a little bit related to programming you already mentioned. My own artistic practice is also based on collaboration with established institutions and bringing in different content and doing some artistic interventions together. And in my experience, when proposing a work, a different narrative that sits a little bit outside mainstream programming or expected artistic lineups, as a form of resistance, the questions around artistic quality often emerge. And in your context, how do you experience this dynamic in Vienna? Because it's a city strongly associated with canonized and high-end art forms. So how do you negotiate when a similar situation happens?
Yeah, so we do face and we see, because a lot of us are also working as artists and having our artistic practices, that actually institutional language uses this artistic quality or this aesthetics, actually instrumentalizing it to fight this unfamiliarity, because what is familiar to them, it's canon. But we always are very clear and pretty much, I would say, here demanding. And when we are saying that it's historically shaped, and it's shaped by hierarchies, and it's shaped by all this means of exclusion. And then, like, aesthetics, it's not neutral. And yeah, we are just clear when we are requesting and demanding the answer exactly how they defined this artistic quality, because most of the time it's their tool, it's their instrument to just kick out the perspectives they don't want to see, or everything that's unfamiliar appears to them kind of needs a translation, needs adaptation. Yeah, so we are pretty much clear about origins of it and instrumentalization of it. So in this, we will go around by just being pretty much straightforward on it. I don't know, how are you going around it? Would you also say, hey?
Well, I definitely agree with you. Of course, it's very important to be persistent, first of all, not to accept this kind of so-called excuses, and just open up the historical perspective of how the art forms have been developed and which kind of norms have been accepted as the high quality or aesthetics, and how these decisions have been made. And again, what was the position of cultural management elite that time and continuing today. I think these are very much relevant questions when we talk about discrimination. Critical work. And maybe another point attached to this, I very much enjoyed when you open up the definition of inclusion and to bring a bit broader and more demanding version of it. Actually, it's not a certain adds-on to any context, or it's not having some people present in some spaces, but to see it as a structural transformation. So from that definition, where do you think this inclusion work could go in an organization that is committed to this transformation? How do they start? What should they do to really practice to be more inclusive than today?
Here, I would say that my answers are pretty much the ones that I hear from people. It's very funny, give us money. So it's inviting. Like the programming is still, because I said inclusion, it's not only having people on the stage, but it means not having only them on the stage as tokens. Like you have all the program and then finally appears someone that you can say we have a diverse program, but really like committed, because we are talking about committed organization, to have the program that would be inclusive. And the most important thing, to have people in the organization itself. Because yeah, we do, and we are very proud that we have our expert network and consultant network. And the knowledge circulates, the knowledge comes into the institution, it supports people also in place. When the people are working inside institution and they are not minority, this is actually where a lot of work is driven, a lot of work can be done. And yeah, it's also shouldn't be a kind of act of generosity, like having one person in department, because I've been on this place and our work now is the arts loaded with emotional labor. But being one BIPOC in white institution, it's extremely a lot of expectations. It's extremely a lot of also kind of always juggling what should I say here and how I should go to communities and so on. So here it's also very important that the institutions would be aware that they can reproduce some kind of violence, even with their goodwill. So the personal, it doesn't mean one person. The personal means exactly like the whole alliance of people having their willingness to do it.
Thank you very much. Maybe from this people at the core of everything, I would like to continue with a question to bring the background of all these beautiful photos that you showed during the presentation. And you mentioned I, together with Sonia, attended one of your gatherings last November, and it was very powerful experience for me. And diversity work, of course, often carries a heavy emotional load, as you mentioned, because it engages directly with exclusion, discrimination, structural inequality. And if you are a person who have this experience in your daily work and in your daily life, then it becomes more strong. But what about the joy and pleasure and excitement part of it? So I would like to ask you, how do you create conditions where connection and collective joy really can grow and multiply? So is there a recipe for that that you can share with us?
Recipe with a lot of ingredients. The salad should be fresh. So within the team is also clear understanding that we need quick wins, because the structural change is a long-term process, and then you can get frustrated. But just to have something always in agenda that can be find a quick solution, because then you get this kind of satisfaction. So the quick wins are helping us internally, and once internally we are strong, we are not burning out, we can move forward. And externally, it's, as you said, translocal alliances, like to have the program that will combine formats where people can actually not only reflect on something from the negative part, like criticizing or pointing out, it's very important, but also having the formats like listening session or dancing session, or what we had with Graciela when we were like touching, going through the spaces and everything. Yeah, just have it in our programs, these moments of joy, the moments like good curation of the program. It's also like sometimes it's separate formats, like with practice and network, 4 hours working on a concrete issue, but we can do something extra and then have like community gathering, because Translocal Alliances is a huge program. It was a lot of pre-work in the field, but it also required resources. But it can be also something small, like this Tuesday we had a gathering with people who are working with moving images, and we cooked ourselves. So we cooked together and we said it's a cookout session. We invite you to cook together, to share like over meals. And then it's also like people just, they are asking for something, like for advices for something, but then they're also sharing some joy. And in general, like, because we are all busy, it's very hard to find time. Just coming together is already so cool. Like, I'm using some events just to meet my friends because it's like, unfortunately, the conditions we are trying to sustain in that having lack of time. But then these programs, they can be exactly like the moment where the shared joy happens.
Thank you very much, Amelie. we are coming to the end of our session, and I would like to conclude with one small question to you. Stop Hatred Now as a platform, as you know, have been working and bringing these questions and trying to transform and contribute to transformation of Finnish art ecosystem with a strong dynamics and strong people and practitioners who committed to the platform. And we are also collaborating with different arts and cultural institutions and organizations based in Finland. So based on the experience through the arts, what three things you would recommend any institution who, or the team of the institutions who would like to commit to discrimination critical work? What three basic steps they should take to start their transformation?
Attend Stop Hatred Now. Visit the arts website and talk to people, be open. So the spaces are here. Sometimes we are like in search for something, but it's already there. You just come to the space. It's also like also kind of exclusionary when I say come to the space, because we have social people, we have people with social anxiety that can't do this, then the virtual spaces might be more of an answer. But yeah, I think imagination is for sure, as you said, the creativity, but also just the superficial research. Because even in superficial research, once you are asking and texting something on internet, something like about critical approaches and something, Stop Hatred Now will be there. If you do the same for Austria, you will find the arts website. So like if you have commitment, you have to find time to open up the online like resources and to check them, it's already there. And then to talk to people. Maybe if there's some barriers to talk to people like on spot, reaching out through other forms and exchange.
Thank you very much. I think curiosity is the core, right? Don't be shy. Just do a basic search and reach out to expert organizations and people, professions who are willing to support and be a part of the cultural transformation altogether. Thank you. Thank you very much, Jameli, for your input for this wonderful conversation. I think today's conversation really reminds us that alliances are not automatic. They require labor, negotiation, listening, conflict, also care, long-term commitment. And also it requires people who will carry this work. And there is so much possibilities for solidarity, collective imagination, structural transformation, and no single institution or individual can achieve alone. So that's why platforms like Stop Hatred Now or networks like the arts and many other wonderful examples in many different places exist for that. So I'm very happy and glad to have you with us today and get to know more information about the arts work and your experiences. Once again, thank you, Jameli.
Thank you, dear Jada. And I'm very thankful that you invited the arts. And I was very impressed by you and Sonia. Sonia I have seen already before. Sonia was invited to one of the other event, Network and Practice. I think it was 2024. And also that you just give us the space for exploration, what's happening in Finland as well. Because we were talking about alliances and yeah, we are coming now on one state level, like it's in Austria, but learning from different countries, what's happening there. It's also a broader alliance that we really value and want to foster even further. And I really enjoyed this festival. I'm looking forward to take digitally in some parts of it, and in general when we were talking or when you were putting some questions, I see how these questions are coming from your own practice, from your own experience, and maybe the next time we will have something where I will be the host and can ask you more questions, because yeah, it's really like this exchange, it's one of the most valuable things, and this gives a lot of strength, it gives a lot of hope. Thank you for inviting.
Thank you very much. And maybe it's time to conclude on the note of hope. The work will be always there. People, committed people will be always there. Yes, we should be more united, more connected over the national borders, and at the core of our commitment, and do the work together. And I would like to, of course, thank you everyone who had the time to watch our session, and I wish you all a wonderful rest of the festival and the platform and the program.
Thank you so much, Jada. Thank you, Jameline. Friends, now we'll take a 15-minute break, after which we'll continue into the live discussion of the day. So we will see you in a short bit. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the fourth day of Stop Hatred Now 2026. My name is Sonja Lindfors, and now we'll continue with the live panel discussion titled Include, Exclude, Changing Standards in Art Education. So in this panel discussion, we will hear Nemat Bata, Özgü Gundesliolu, and Rafael Bo. And this conversation will be moderated by Dash She. So, do I have Nemat, Özgü, Rafael, Dash here? Warmly welcome.
Hello.
Hello. Good
Actually
to
looks
see you. How are you doing? Dash, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm a bit surprised how there is like a little halo because of my headphones around me. I find it a bit entertaining and very strange, but maybe I'll just go with that. I'm doing well. Really looking forward to today's panel.
Amazing. Nemat, how are you doing?
I'm good. Yeah. Surprised why it got cold outside out of a sudden, but it's like, no takatelvi, please.
I know Finland is weird for everybody, anybody listening somewhere else. Finnish spring comes with surprises. That's
Exactly.
good. How are you? How are you doing?
I'm good, Sonja. Thank you.
Amazing. And then, do we have Rafael here? Nope, we don't have Rafael here yet. No worries, sometimes there might be some technical hiccups, but we can also do so that Dash, you can just start, and once we have Rafael here, we'll just help them join the conversation. But we're really excited for this conversation, and now the floor is yours.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Dash Che. I use they and he pronoun. And just a little bit about me. I have been a performance artist and art educator in Finland for the last 7 years. And before that, I worked as an educator in different contexts and settings in Russia and the United States. I'm a Russian-born artist, and I'm very passionate about the topic of art education and all the struggles and questions that come around it. So I'm looking forward to talking with three of you in depth about it because you all are practicing artists and also art educators working in different disciplines and different institutional or non-institutional settings. So it would be really interesting to hear your opinion of where are we going with art education in Finland and what are the struggles that you specifically face as a foreign-born art educators, especially in current anti-immigrant turn in Finnish and altogether European politics, which creates a very specific set of struggles. So maybe, hi, Rafael, maybe we can start with you one by one giving short introduction of yourself and specifically of yourself as a teacher or art educator. And should we start with, well, Nemat is the closest to me, so start with you.
Yes, thank you so much, Dash. My name is Namat Battah. I am Palestinian Jordanian. I've been in Finland for 8 years, 4 of which I've been studying at the Global Music Department in Sibelius Academy, and now I am a lecturer there and vice head of department. So I teach multiple group and individual courses and some community engagement projects as well. And our department is largely based on international students from outside the EU. Also, a lot of them are not from the EU. So I deal with multi and different cultural and musical backgrounds on daily basis. Yeah, I don't know what to say more, but maybe I'll give it to the next person.
Thank you. That's a great start. Özgü?
Hello, everyone.
I mean, it has been said many times, but appreciation is a practice we should never skip and neglect. So at the risk of repeating it again and being cliche, I want to thank Urban Upper team and the different formations they brought together and all the labor behind this. I try to follow the conversations as much as possible, and they feed into each other very organically. Listening, being here, sharing this space today with Nemat, Rafael, and Dash feels really good. Thank you. I'm Özgü. To introduce myself in relation to today's panel, first, I can tell that I'm a visual artist. My practice is material driven, and that material has long been ceramic or unfired form of it, clay. While I try to think and practice through through clay, I also try to facilitate from that perspective. Before coming to Finland, I worked as a researcher and educator at Akdeniz University in Turkey for about 9 years. Today, I work as a freelance educator, but to be honest, I'm a bit uneasy with the word educator. It doesn't escape certain power patterns in my mind. So I will swing between using educator and facilitator. I hope this doesn't cause any confusion. One more thing that I want to mention, I think it is relevant to mention that I'm a board member of Catalysti, Transcultural Artists in Finland, whose main mission is to support non-Finnish artists navigating networks and structures in Finland.
Thank you. And this is a very important point, facilitator versus educator, and maybe the tension that creates in this title. Thanks for bringing that up. And Rafael?
Yes, hi. And yeah, I also want to say thank you to the whole Urbanapa team and to you, Dash, for inviting and for being part of this conversation. I've been following mostly on Tuesday the conversations, and I felt, oh wow, it's like already connected to what we are talking here. So I feel like in the continuation, and I've seen like some also colleagues, but also met new people. So it feels like such a valuable platform here in Helsinki and beyond. And so my name is Rafael Beau. I was born and grew up like in France, and now I live in Finland after a few time in Berlin. And how do I define myself? Maybe first as a performance artist, and then facilitator or artist facilitator. So that's great that Oscar, you brought the theme, and maybe we get the occasion to talk about it during this conversation. And maybe also I want to point out that I'm like a EU person, a EU artist, so I face some maybe like struggle here, but I also have the privilege to not have to ask for residency permits or fear the threat of deportation and stuff like this. So just to point out also this maybe difference from non-EU artists. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for introduction. And maybe we can start right away with the title, which is Include and Exclude, and build a question from there. How included or excluded do you feel in a field of the cultural field of Finland as an art facilitator, art educator? And maybe we can go to Nemat again and just follow this order.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dash. Well, it was not easy in the beginning. And I'm definitely one of maybe the more fortunate ones that I had some luck in getting my foot into the grant world since 2022. And I think collaborating with Finnish artists also has helped me a lot, not to stay on the side, but it was not easy. Are we talking as an artist or as an art educator? Because I separate myself from those two, like, yeah. So
Yeah, true.
no.
I think we can start you as like a kind of whole person and artist, and then go towards the art education.
Okay, because of course
Yeah.
they're connected, but I also like in my performing world and music making and composing, I've had more luck, I think, than other people from outside the EU, and I recognize that, and I'm thankful for it. But also, like, I did work hard for my connections and maybe found the right people to connect with and the right approach. But as an art educator, sometimes it can be quite lonely in the institutional level, because there's this notion of wanting to be a diverse institution and bring people from all over the world and show that we have workers from different places. But when it comes to actually dealing with what does that mean and how to actually include us, it's often fails because the people making the decisions and the people making the policies, they come from a perspective of white Finnish, and they don't really know the reality of what we go through or how we think, or I'm talking also how does that reflect on the students, not only us, the staff members. So there's this good intention of wanting to be diverse and blah blah blah, all that stuff, but in reality it's on surface level, in most institutions, I would say, in Finland that I've dealt with, at least. So there is this two realities that I'm living, that in the performing world, but also, of course, it's still limiting. I only get invited to certain types of festivals and events, and especially the last 2 years, it's always around the piece of the theme of peace, or like I sometimes get put in this kind of box that because I am Palestinian and I'm a musician, then you only get invited to certain events, but not to the other ones that have like maybe no political agenda or something. Sorry if I'm not making any sense, but yeah, maybe I don't have so much more to add for this question.
Thank you. No, you're absolutely making sense. Thank you so much for bringing those up. Maybe Özgür, how included or excluded do you feel as an artist or art educator? And maybe we can broaden that. Who is included and who is excluded from the art education in Finland?
Yeah, like I'd like to maybe first, as an entry point, touch upon this, like having different roles. Like as we all here, I don't exist purely as an in the educator position, move between different roles like artist, even a warehouse worker with other artists, and I'm involved with art education or education through art. And I think like this is the reality for many in the cultural field. We are these chimeras, these multi-headed monsters that trying to navigate these different roles. About the inclusion, I might like define maybe inclusion feeling stable and secure. If we approach from there, at least, of course, that's not the only part. But so within this context, I cannot say that I feel stable and secure with these different roles that I'm navigating through. That wasn't a choice, this having multiple identities, but actually it became a potential. I feel like right now, at least in my career, I feel like I'm in a melting phase. Is melting a good thing? For now, I can enjoy it. I can cope it. This state of being viscose, like something between solid and liquid, like it's the process of change. It's not stable, but it somehow flows. That's why I'm describing as potential. But like compared to my other roles, I can tell that education is the most comfortable one. For me, the frame holds better there in teaching. Like contrast to Nemat, that for me, the sense of individual pressure is less in teaching. It's more relational, I can tell, because maybe my teaching is more duo collaboration based. That might be one reason. But this is a very personal and sentimental perspective. Structurally, I don't believe education is any easier. It holds the same institutional blockages that, as Nemat mentioned, and it requires a lot of mental load. I just want to mention that during my challenging postpartum period, being a freelancer really sucked because I couldn't bring together my mental strength to produce and to facilitate. And you cannot afford as a freelancer to pause in the culture work economically and network ways, you know that, because one event affects the other and you keep yourself in the loop. So there is no structure for stopping there. But I needed to enter the economy somehow. So this warehouse work became a savior there. Interesting because when we categorize, we put cultural work in the caring part, and this other warehouse work is more related to efficiency, like capitalism. But the reality was I was fed and cared by the what stands opposite of art. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for this. Raphael?
Yes, thanks. So, I think I can relate to some things. I graduated like 3 years ago from the theater academy in the dance performance master, and I was like super lucky because I got offered to teach like right after my studies, like 1 month after I got to teach like a 1 week full course. So it felt to me like, oh wow, that's such an opportunity. And I know also this happened because of the institution, or like being myself a student in the institution and developing like a practice, like play and act from what is here, and then it became a course, like from a student project or like a master's thesis project, then it became a course. And I felt like, yeah, I was in the right place. So like some people saw this and then get the practice into a course, and then maybe then I would say that there is like big changes. Like suddenly, like I had this course, which was a great opportunity, but after that, there was like nothing for a long time. So how to be maybe in this like instability of having suddenly an opportunity, and it can be a grant, it can be a course, it can be like a collaboration with an institution, and then this might end, or like this might last 1 week or 1 month, and then there is need like to work again to find like collaborators or entry points to institutions. But I think for me the most way I've been like included was through like people I've met, and that's also my somehow the community I rely on. If it can be like difficult some month, I know that also all the works opportunity that I get is through like community or like colleagues, friends, even if it's like unstable work and I don't know from 1 month to another what's going to be the opportunity at the moment, but I kind of trust more and more that there are like people around through activism and also practicing art, and also this privilege of having studied in an institution. Maybe I can say this now.
Yeah. It was very important how Özgür, Nemat, and Raphael, you all pointed that, first of all, like you're multifaceted human beings. There are so many roles that you embrace. It's not like only teaching, facilitation, but it also being an artist, being a community member, being an activist, being a mother in Özgür's case, etc. So that's very important to look at our role as teachers from all these different points. And also another question is stability, how stable one feels in their teaching role and altogether as non-Finnish born artist in Finland. I was thinking that many times as a freelance artist who also graduated here from Theatre Academy in conversations with different stakeholders, I was given advice that being a teacher here, being a facilitator here in Finland perhaps would give a more stable position, because being a freelance artist outside of an institution is constantly relying on grant applications or chasing after this stable position. But actually teaching can bring stability, but is it so? Maybe that's the question, how stable it is to be a facilitator or teacher in Finland. And some of you already have responded to that, but maybe another question would be, what are the support structures do you have, or do you lack, or do you need in your role as facilitator or teacher in Finland? And whoever wants to go first.
Does someone else other than me want to go first? Just to break the cycle.
Okay, I could try. So does teaching bring stability, and what are the support structures? I think for me, the support structures for like teaching is when I maybe enter a structure for teaching. I've been like running this like plan like from what is here open practice, like platform for practice sharing, happening mostly at TEAC because I had like access to studios, but also in other places like in homes, but also in public space or other studios place in Helsinki. But it's been like, yeah, it's been like sometimes a struggle to have support in like running this activity, even if like with time there's been like more and more people getting interested in this and wanting to get involved and like bring their also experience, knowledge, and like take part also in the pedagogy part of this like open practice. But I think I entered as a substitute teacher the team of like artist facilitators in the queer dance group like in January, and I felt like this is like a support structure, like being part of a group of teachers who have like specific values, and I know like where the group is working towards and what is made for who is included. So I feel like I kind of find myself, or I recognize myself in these values, and then I can also take part in the classes of the other artist facilitators. And also like I have somehow this group of people that I get contact if I have like some difficulties also in teaching. So this has been like definitely a support structure. And I can also name this experience, that this course that we taught with you, Dash, at Taidekouluma, and that was my first time teaching there. And I felt like in itself, like the structure of Taidekouluma is a supporting structure for teaching with their whole like way of functioning and values and approach toward the students, and which I didn't feel at all at the Theatre Academy. When I taught, I felt like super isolated, or when I had like some questions, I felt like who to talk to. Okay, I can talk to my colleagues, but they are not especially part of the Theatre Academy. I don't have like someone that I can talk to within the institution. So I think that the support structure really depend on where I'm working. And maybe a little example that we started like this grassroots organized like network, or starting like to build a community out of different communities of grassroots organized free shared art spaces in Helsinki. And it sounds like so valuable, like what we are doing, and I really like care about this. And at the same time, I realized that without funding, it's also like a lot of work and energy to like to keep on going, and also how to deal with possible like conflict when we become, now we're like a group of like maybe 20-25 people, and how to organize meetings and how to make it like consistent and regular along time, and this could definitely be like a support, like grassroots support structure for artist facilitators or educators, teachers. But then, yeah, question mark of like how to keep on running. Yeah, okay, a little bit like mixed thoughts in the room. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Anyone wants to continue?
I can try to follow up here. Like what Raphael told was like, actually, maybe I will be repeating because like it's a reflection or like mirroring what I have in my mind. So maybe it is good to repeat and like, so like this will be a pattern, like if we emphasize the problem. So as like we are, or at least from myself, like I can tell that being an educator in the margin, I'm not saying because of my expertise I'm in the margin, but I'm not in the center because in like, for example, I did not study here. I don't have a full-time or repetitive position as an educator. So that automatically pushes me out of the center. It takes time, but story travels from margin to the center, and like there we are finding each other. So I really care about the community there because then the common points become like more something that deeply connects you and that has more ethical frequency when you come across with the community in that margin. So my support system right now, I can tell that peers who are like juggling as I am in different positions in the either art education or as an artist. So that is for me the most important support, and like we need to actually make this more structural, maybe.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for your input. I have a different experience that I'm not sure how much one could or should say, but like I don't think there is really any support system in where I'm working at the moment for me or, well, actually for anyone else. We have the thought that we are a community, or that we think differently about music education than other places. We're trying to decolonize music education and all these beautiful sentiments, but in reality there is little to no support when it comes to actual things happening. Especially like as Ozgu said, that this job is really mentally demanding, and especially when you deal with, in my case, when you deal with students from all over the world and you can't separate what they have been through in their lives, whether it's social injustice or war trauma or any of these really heavy themes, that they're bound to come your way at some point, and you don't know how to, we don't have the training how to deal with that. We don't have support between us how to deal with these things. And of course, it's not even like we're not qualified to deal with these kind of things with the students. But yeah, within the structure itself, there is no support, unfortunately. And we do have some shared values, of course, and discussing those things often. But again, there's this, yeah, sometimes I do feel that the perspective I bring is wanted and appreciated, but it's rarely taken into consideration when there's policy making or taking decisions that actually affect on a big picture. It's rarely taken into consideration. It's just, okay, we'll give you the space to say your opinion and talk about it. But when it comes to taking action, it's either doesn't exist or like comes with a huge delay, or because I was a student in the same institution before, and I've been through similar experiences to what these students are going through. So I come from that perspective of wanting change to happen, for example. I'm kind of like going a little bit off track, but this is basically what I mean, that there's a huge lack of support for me, and I think for other teachers of different backgrounds, because the system is built mostly for Finns or for people who speak Finnish. This is how I feel, or for someone who have the privileged experience of being all their life born and raised here. Yeah.
Thank you. You bring in very important points. So maybe may I ask you to follow up with that, if I can put you on a spot here, like what would be concrete needs and concrete structural needs that you could voice here to start tackling this very deep institutional issues, but something that, for instance, you could suggest. Oh, we had this conversation before a bit, so you were speaking about maybe some training for the teachers, etc., for the staff, but if you could voice it here.
Yeah, I think some like big scale and small scale staff training, depending on the needs of the department and the needs of the institution, of, well, what does it mean actually to work in an intercultural environment? What are the work ethics? What are how do you deal with this kind of, what does it mean actually to work in a diverse environment? Not just the beauty of having people from all over the world playing all these wonderful instruments, but also the reality of how these people are struggling to fund their studies, to even have their basic level of dignity in this country. So most people are in a survival mode. How does that even work? How can you be creative and focus on your music making when you're in a survival mode constantly? What does it mean, this equity? Does it actually apply in these kind of situations? Or how does it, all these themes of like, what is it to be in a classroom, teaching in a classroom where some people can't afford to eat today and the others have own a house or something, and all these, like, to tackle all these things that come with this beautiful diversity and interculturalism and multidisciplinary and decolonial, all these beautiful words that we want, but what does it actually mean in reality? And how do we deal with these things? Because we are not coped, we are not trained to deal with this. We are hopeful and we want to focus on the music making, but there's a lot of things that go under the surface. And I think that also applies to other art institutions, not only music. So to actually have these deep conversations and also facilitate these conversations within the students themselves, when they talk about power dynamics and privilege and these kind of conversations. So there needs to be this big training, I think, and also individual support for teachers, not just like go get a work psychologist from Mehilainen who has no idea about your background or what you're dealing with. You need also someone who knows what is it to work in this kind of environment, and to work with diversity. Of course, I'm talking about a very specific case in my department where there's a lot of diversity. Maybe that doesn't apply to all other departments in the bigger picture of art institution. So the issues would be different in other places. But yeah, I think we need definitely some kind of support structure for the teachers from qualified people who know how to tackle these things. Because of course, there will be people arguing that, oh, but we have well-being courses for the teachers and we have this and that, but it's not the same because again, it's from one perspective that does not apply to everyone. So how do we take all these into consideration? Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah, there's so much structural inequality on so many levels, because when I started as a non-EU student at Theatre Academy of Uni Arts in, I think it was 2019, there was already a fee for non-EU student, which now has become much higher and really unaffordable for so many people from non-EU countries to travel, support themselves, and also pay for their education. It already creates this premise of such a huge inequality in the room: who has to work and pay for their education versus who even get financial support from the government to study.
Yeah, exactly. And then basically the other level of that is what kind of support do we have? What kind of support structures do we have for the students? Because there is none especially for international students, and it's so painful for me to see them going through all these things, that they would go to a therapist offered by the student healthcare, who also has zero idea about their cultural background, what they have been through, and then there's all this like misdiagnosis and I'm not a therapist myself, but I hear stories from the students about that, oh, I left the session feeling worse than I went in. And I'm like, okay, that's really sad. And there is, again, like many students don't even know where to go or who to turn to when they face health issues. And it doesn't work that someone comes from a completely different continent. You just give them a PDF of 9 pages and tell them, here's some information about Finland and find out yourself. Bye-bye. Like, there needs to be different support structures for the students, and how also to encourage them to support each other more and to share resources more, because that's something like it's not sustainable at all if it's just one group of students have a lot of support and the other has little to no support, and then we have to pretend that everything is okay and we have to collaborate together and share the music and share experiences. It's really like creates a huge destabilizing and dehumanizing even power structure there. Okay, I talked so much. I'm gonna stop talking now and give it to someone else.
Yeah, indeed. And also it lays so much responsibility on the shoulders of facilitator, right? If there's no any other structures and you constantly as a facilitator face this inequality and this struggle of some students in the room, and they have to produce and perform while you have to navigate this balance of power.
Exactly.
Yeah. Maybe we can move to Özgü and Rafael and also speak from your perspective and your experience. What structures are missing for you that you need to feel comfortable as a facilitator or teacher, or for the group that you serve and facilitate to feel comfortable and supported? So from these both sides, of course, you maybe not part of the group you facilitate in, but if you can also kind of speak about them.
Yeah, I could go if it's fine for you. That's good. First of all, I'm just now reflecting on what you said, Nemat, and something that you don't think that there is any support system or there is little to no support, and I feel like so important to be reminded of this, because sometimes I tend to think like, oh yes, we're doing like all these like grassroots organized little things here and there, and it's good because we're like supporting each other and so on. But I feel like I also tend to forget that the structural problems are still there, and we are really, really, really far away from like kind of solving them. And I feel like when I listen to you, I feel like there would be like a need like to all like reshape the whole institution, no? The whole education system and support of art educators, and like considering, as you said, also all the situation of like every person, every students, and also tackling this in the same, like how to work with this like when we're all together in the same room. So yeah, thanks for this. And I think for me, for my own situation, I think that I would love also like to have like also structure where I can be myself, like a continuous student, and maybe that's what I've been trying in this like education spaces, or also my way of facilitating like how to create an environment when there is also in the teaching like the questioning the position of teachers and students, and also with this question that teachers have like skills, and it's important to value this, and at the same time like how to by teaching like giving space to the people who are in the room, and where but yeah, maybe my support system has been like to myself like try to find like other classes, like for example in Helsinki, like doing my own like weekly training. Okay, there is this dance training at Helsinki Kaupungin Teatteri on mornings, and then there's like the classes at Queer Dance Group that I can go to, and then I'm listening to this podcast, and then I'm reading this book, and then colleagues are recommending me this like resources, and then I'm co-teaching with Udash, and then I'm learning like other things. So I feel like it's kind of wow, like it's kind of comes then to the individual or the person to make their own program of like supporting my like art education or facilitating. So yeah, in a way there is no, oh, I feel like now that the structure has to be built from the existing many little structures, but then kind of work of like picking here and there to build a program for the self. Yeah, I don't know if it makes sense, but that's what it, yeah, came to me now.
Maybe I can jump in that here to define the what we need, what sort of support systems we need. Like maybe also we should define the difficulties, challenges we face as facilitators in Finland. For me, the main problem, as also Nemat mentioned, the whole system was like kind of meant for the people who were born here. Is like, for me, the main problem is the language right now. I'm already having difficulties to translate my relationship I have with material to codified words, even in my native language, because it's so embodied and tacit knowledge. On top of it, English distances me one step further. And as I started to call Finland after 6 years and a child, that I realized I cannot go very far without Finnish, like that skill set. So it's ironic a bit, like this realization coming after calling somewhere home, like you decided to settle. So you realize what you are actually lack of because the tourist mode is over, or visitor mode. So like I and then decided to maybe if it is possible to hijack the language, Finnish language. What I am telling here in this fabulous book, Minor Feelings by Katie Parkhouse, she explains hijacking through her relation with English, that the writer says that it was once a source of shame, but now I can say it proudly, that English is my heritage and it's my poetry. And she queers English, she twerks it, hack it, and other it. So this is something maybe like I started to think that like this Finnish thing shouldn't be something I should integrate and I should perfect myself there. But I just like use it in my own way, finding some entry point to there. That's maybe hijacking as one thing that I'd like to mention here as a self-activist, maybe not systematic, but an clandestine approach, I can tell.
Thank you. And I know that you have a facilitation practice that is teaching Finnish through Clay. Could you speak a bit about that? And is it related to this different methods of hijacking the language?
Yeah, definitely. It is called right now Sculpture Finnish. It's an alternative language learning model. It's kind of adopts this kielikahvila or language cafe model, like we all know. Like if you happen to at some point like try to study Finnish, but instead of that language cafe model, this one offering clay-based workshops for adult Finnish language learners. Like basically clay as a material and language, they are similar, and it opens a gate to familiarize yourself to the language. And right now the workshops like co-facilitated by a language teacher and me, and a professor from the University of Helsinki helps us to build a pedagogical model. But for me, the most important part of this project, it's not like how we teach Finnish in a different way, but it also offers a paid practice space for non-native Finnish speaking artist educators like myself. A space to make mistakes, to experiment, because we are all good at our practices in some levels, but like that, using Finnish, combining it with Finnish is the challenging part. We have done so far 4 events. For now, it is all with Clay, that I was one of the co-facilitators. But the next step is to try with other artists with different backgrounds. So I would be happy to discuss with anyone who is interested and see how we can collaborate. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope people who are listening to today's panel discussion will be interested and reach out more. We also have time for Q&A just in a little bit, maybe in about 15 minutes. So please make your questions ready, those who are listening. But I think this is a really good opening to the next question that I have, which is, who are we teaching and what are we teaching? Which I think those are kind of very important components of this role and this practice that we have. And specifically, what are we teaching in terms of values, like outside of maybe the subject, which is maybe music or performance, or, well, you work with Clay Like what are the values that are important for you to bring into your teaching or make you excited or make you passionate about what you do? Who wants to take it away? Nemat, you're smiling.
Well, Uzgu also looked ready to press the button, but did
Yeah,
you want?
I felt bad that I never initiated this, but like,
No,
yeah,
please.
please go for it, Nema.
No worries. Yeah. Okay, now I'm a bit, can you repeat the question, Dash?
Yeah, speak a little bit about the values that you are bringing into your facilitation and teaching practice that is especially important in this really like kind of racist anti-immigrant turn in Finland.
Yeah, I think the big one for me is learning, that I am able to learn and to come with an open mind and an open heart, to listen and also reflect on my behavior if I have realized that I made some kind of mistake, to come back and apologize, and just to come with a huge openness, because it is mentally demanding. It's beautiful, but it's also complicated dynamics. And also that I have a lot to learn myself, and to evolve constantly and think about not only the music side of it, but also the human side of it, and how the connection with the students and how to develop that. And so I try to come always with an open mind and heart for learning, and to admit if I made a mistake, and all the beautiful, painful learning path that we go through in life. And also from purely the musical side, also to come with dedication and professionality of giving everything that I can give to the students, and to facilitate the process in an honest way, and how to make them understand this collaborative process, and how I am part of it, to know when to step in and when to step out, and when to let them handle the situations and all that. Also, I feel it's one of my responsibilities also to basically use a little bit of discipline also, because I think I feel in today's world, there's a huge lack of discipline between, I don't know, is it a new phenomenon with the new generation, or it's the social media addiction, or the phones, or all that. And I feel that it's also my job as a facilitator, as an art teacher, to introduce discipline into the education, and what does that mean, and how does that affect their professional life, and their opportunities that they get outside of the university, to prepare them basically for the world outside the university world, and the professionalism world. Of course, in a kind manner, discipline, being firm, but in a kind manner. Yeah, and then just being myself. It's hard for me not to be myself anyways, but just being myself, being open and open to learn is I think the most important thing for me.
Thank you. Yeah. Ask you, Rafael.
I can add, like, to Nemat here, that most of the things I also share. I just don't want to repeat, but it is really important that to be feeling yourself. Like, again, I will get back to this, having all these different roles and being a chimera. I just like want to be comfortable. Like, I want to feel comfortable when I'm stepping into that, or like prioritizing that role of mine, that I want to be there with the other entities of mine. I want to be able to like pet this monster, multi-headed monster I have. And from a broader maybe angle, I can tell that I think we like really should stop that justifying art's existence. And it's a really terrible backdrop for art making, this expectation that artists, art educators need to prove their worth. And as a system, as a knowledge construction, art is typically not good at that. So it struggles being measured and with being measurable. It's a slippery thing, you know, that creates knowledge in gaps between other things, other fields, and maybe it defies the metrics altogether. So this is one thing, like one major thing we should always keep telling, and we shouldn't put the validation on top of everything. And I think also I kind of accept that art education is like scaffolding, like a temporary thing, like it changes, and it's a container that you fill the content, which you fill the content. And yeah, maybe the institutions that you are getting the education is there to catch you as an individual, not you are there to feel yourself from the institution.
Thank you.
I guess I could go now. Yes, well, thank you both for I took notes, or like, yeah, I'm touched by your values, and I think, yes, I was thinking like different things, but I'm teaching or facilitating mostly like movement workshops or like dance, and I'm been like really interested in this like movement as what is like movement as the body moving, and then movement like as a social organization and like political movements. I mean, from my little experience or engaging in activism. And so I feel like my responsibility is like always to connect what I'm teaching maybe in the moment to things that are happening like in like personal situation, if people want to share or bring it into the class, and with the lens of one specific topic that I suggest. And so yeah, maybe this always like connecting like what's happening in the classroom to what's happening outside of the classroom, and also making it maybe like a privileged moment, like that we have this time in the studio or in the classroom to process this, and to make it also a laboratory for where it's also like possible, yeah, to fail and make mistakes and practice repair as well. So how all these things, like coming back to the topic also of this Stop Hatred Now topic, like accountability of and care, how can this be practiced into the classroom? And I was thinking about like how to be prepared enough, like before going, like really knowing what I'm gonna share with the students, but at the same time being like ready, like enough to be with the moment and like redirect the class or the course. And a last thing that I care more and more is about like naming, and like naming like the heritage, or like where do I come from, or like when I teach something, if it's not specifically like from my own heritage, but I've been learning from it, like giving it back through naming, and I would say like maybe naming is now like not enough, but also inviting the people maybe who are like more from that heritage that I learned from. And at the same time, and maybe this is like the most recent thing that appeared to me, like finding maybe like in oneself or in myself, what is it that I'm really doing, and that I'm not someone else. And I think that also in this moment, like I feel like I've been learning, and we're like often like sharing the work of and like drawing from like the work like of marginalized, more marginalized community and BIPOC people. And for me, like for example, in dance, I've been like a lot like inspired by this. But then I'm like, okay, at the same time, like I'm like a white person, and what do I do with this, and how do I can also like find my own heritage? So I don't know, maybe this can be a bit controversial, and I'm like a bit like trying out with those thoughts, but how like not to always like take from, but also find in oneself like what's like doing the work, or what is it that I'm made of, and what is it that I want to dismantle in myself, and being honest with this.
Yeah, and I think just continuing this thought, thank you, Rafael, to think about how does your teaching practice connect to an activist practice, if you have one. Does it merge somewhere or intersect somewhere for you? And how it is important, or is it important for you to bring activism in your teaching practice? If anyone has thoughts on that.
Yeah, I can go. I think I tried the activism world for a little bit, but I don't think it's for me, honestly. Or I don't know, how do you consider what is activism in this way? Because
Right.
I consider part of the music that I do without labeling it as like active activism. And I think it's a bit difficult depending how to bring it to the students in a context that is, it's really difficult in where I teach, for example, because it's, again, there's already so much inequality between the students themselves in the classroom. So how do you bring this topic there in a way that doesn't harm anyone, or doesn't cause harm instead of actually helping? Of course, like we do, for example, we do a lot of community engagement projects there has been a project with immigrant communities, prisoners, kids, all type of different communities in Finland and outside of Finland. So I do consider this also as activism, but I think it depends, like how do you not identify, but what's the word? How do you define activism, and also how can I bring it within my own knowledge and my own experience? I think maybe the way I show it is from my own lived experience of things, and how do I do things, how do I do my music, and I feel that's way more powerful than telling the students, let's sit and talk about activism and how do we do activism. It doesn't feel for me very natural or very, yeah. But I'm also like simply not trained in that. You know, I'm trained in music. This is what I'm trained to do. So I'll just stay in my lane and talk from that kind of perspective. But of course, there has been a lot of activist work in UniArts overall, and I do encourage the students and support them in that if it's a student initiative based. But it's quite hard also as a teacher, as facilitator with a person because you have a certain hierarchy, you have a certain power. So how to bring that topic? It's for me, it feels really quite sensitive, and you need to be really careful of how do you bring it. But of course, it's important. Maybe I just don't know yet how to exactly bring it, or my definition of it can be different than other people. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's very crucial what you say, that kind of you have the values that have ingrained this intersectional politics, or what matters to you truly you bring through your teaching music, rather than organizing students to go to the streets, for instance, and protests.
Exactly, which is good as well, but I can't
Yeah.
do that, you know.
Yeah.
Like I can give one example of my teaching. When I teach Arabic music theory, for example, or Arabic music in general, I come from the perspective of non-Western education and how to decolonize Arabic music theory education. And that's something I know how to do, and I know how to explain, and I know how to come from that perspective. So for me, this is activism. I don't know, like I consider that as one thread of activism, and something that I'm able to do, and able to do concretely and ethically, and something that I have knowledge of. Yeah.
Thank you. Özgür, you were about to start. Sorry, I interrupted.
No, yeah, I agree that it's definitely activism, Namat, and I think for me, being politically engaged means having a sense of your own power, that what you do actually matters, and this is actually sense of belonging to me, like to be being an activist. And but maybe what we should bring and what is maybe missing is anger. Let me be clear, what I mean by anger, this is not something deconstructive. It's not a deconstructive drive. It is to feel uncomfortable. A wise friend of mine once told me, and I really enjoy to mention this in any occasion, this country is like a big beanbag. Once you sit on it, you cannot stand up. His motive was different, but I think this is such a great metaphor of comfort, like a comfort that eventually discomforts you because you keep sitting and your body weight starts to collapse, under your body weight, the structure starts to collapse. And there is this problematic dilemma, I think, in the art, like both my practice and my facilitation, that anything you approach and care about might turn into an aesthetic. And we witness this decolonization aesthetics, for example, things becoming trends, starts to consume itself, resistance becomes a product. So I'm not talking about, again, anger aesthetics, like it doesn't have to be included in the work itself, but anger as a tool to stay alert, because there are also the types of privileges that are flexible. It changes location. We need to be aware of where it moves. We need to be constantly digging out for the invisible. Creating a vocabulary, creating a culture, teaching certain things, these are of course important, but dictionaries are also problematic, that we need to always double check what is the meaning, what was the meaning, what is today, and where is my position around the topic. This bubble is small, and actually we know that yesterday's care activist might today turn into you cannot sit with us gatekeepers. So that's why I'm telling anger matters, not to destroy, but keep asking questions.
This is a very great point. Yeah, I wrote it down, digging out for the invisible. Urgent reminder. Maybe Raphael, you have thoughts?
Yeah, but also there's still 5 minutes and 2 questions in the Q&A, so maybe I don't want to
Yes.
be that long, but thanks so much, Nemat and Özgür, for like bringing the question also, what do we mean also when we say the word like activism? So I think I will stay with this and like also maybe one word that like how to continue like doing things and being with the question and like the trouble, like I'm doing maybe activism in one way, but that might be not the how I'm going to continue and like always like redirect or like question also as perspective as like so-called activist that I'm not doing the right thing, or it might be right in these moments, but I can actually discover that the day after I have to find like other strategies and listen to others and step back. Yeah, for example. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's true. We have only a few minutes left, and that's been really an amazing conversation. I want to talk about this for another 2 hours, but we're about to finish, and there are 2 questions. I can read the first one. Thank you for this panel. How those conditions you teachers and migration background teachers navigate, translate, and affect to the students and the field on your view. I think you all been talking about that. So I would say that this question have been somewhat answered, or at least opened a little bit. Or does anyone have anything to add?
I'm not sure I understand what does that mean?
As maybe maybe the way I understood it, like what kind of conditions that we foreign born or non-Finnish teaching artists work in the field with, given that we have to, I don't know, use translation or maybe don't speak Finnish as well as native speakers. I think that's how I understood it.
Okay.
Yeah. But then the second question is, sorry, go ahead, Özgür.
I think Nemat is mentioning pointing out the question in the chat, I guess, as functions. Am I correct, Nemat?
Oh, yes. Yeah, okay.
It's another question in the chat, not in the Q&A.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay, yeah, so there are a few questions actually. They're like in 2 different chats. There's a chat and Q&A. But there's one question, maybe there is like a moment to start answering and then continue thinking. How do you see the future of arts education from your perspective, from your situation?
I'd like
2 minutes.
If it's okay, I'd like to get back to this, what you mentioned, Ash, in the beginning of the panel about this tuition fee. It was already introduced to non-EU students, but in August 2026, as an extension of this new migration politics, the tuition fee for UniArts per academic year for non-EU students will be 28,000 euros. And the university does not grant any scholarships to cover the tuition fee after this period, after August 26. And of course, on top of it, students must prove savings of approximately 800 euros per month, like according to Migri. And we all know how it is hard to like find a job, like beginning in the studies, to support yourself. So we need to ask, like, who is the education for then? Like the doors of art education are becoming welcoming only for the privileged ones who can afford this as a non-EU students, or you need to be in another way privileged by being and holding an EU passport. And Another question we should ask, I'm asking questions I cannot maybe answer the future, what sort of future, but these questions might maybe light a spark that like, what are we expecting? And then what does Finnish art scene offer after graduation to these individuals who paid this amount of money, and what kind of ecosystem we are building? And we are definitely living in the era of like pathetically bipolar politics, and like funds are only paying lip service to resilience. But yeah, I'm not quite maybe hopeful right now, and it's not a pleasant answer to the question, but I just wanted to point these realities out.
Yeah, it feels quite hopeless to be honest, and thank you for bringing this up. Yes, so maybe just a few moments if someone else wants to speak a little bit about the future, and maybe also some hopes and some dreams that you might have from the field of art education in Finland. Nemat or Rafael?
I hope that the government changes.
Yes.
I think that might solve a lot of problems, but yeah, I just wish for more support for the students and more support for us, the teachers, to make it sustainable, because if it stays as it is now, it's really not sustainable for anyone. Yeah, more inputs from different perspectives, and more openness, more honesty, more willingness to learn, and going inwards and reflecting that outwards, and all these things. But mainly a lot of support is needed. The value of arts needs to be seen by the whole society, and something that we have been struggling with for many years, not only now, but it seems that everyone is thinking more about defense, and all the budget is going towards that. But we need also, like, I hope for a lot of collectiveness and coming together, realizing how important it is now, out of all the times, to come more together. Yeah, I will stop talking. Maybe Rafael wants to say last words.
Oh wow, yeah, last words. Okay, quick ones, but I +1 for change of governments, and also maybe like better acknowledgement of the situation of of others, and and then honesty in relation to this, acknowledging own privilege, power, and then when acknowledging this, like really developing more tools to take action according to this, and like being also accountable for oneself, and like making others like accountable with care, maybe. Oh my God, a lot of words, but yeah, action. Thank you.
Responsibility and care. Thank you so much, everyone. Yeah, and thank you, Stop Hatred Now. That was amazing.
Thank you so much, Dash, Özgür, Nemat, and Rafael. Again, like really important points. We already had a conversation on Tuesday about with the title "Finland is Pushing Us Out," accountability towards our international artist community. And this, as Özgür has said, like this is a really horrible situation now with the entrance exams and the fees and all of this, that the question, like, who can actually imagine becoming an artist, and then what happens once people have gone through the art education. So these are really, really crucial conversations if we want to have a field also in the future where there is diversity from backgrounds, social classes, and so on. So hopefully those of who are listening, maybe with power from different institutions, again, we have to take these thoughts, these initiatives further, and really to think about how can we push for change within our own communities and our own institutions. Thank you so much. This was a super important conversation. Once more, a reminder that these conversations will stay online on our website, so they can be disseminated and visited later as well. But now we are approaching the end of our today's webinar. So thank you once more, Özgür, Rafael, Nemat, and Dash.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And to everyone listening the stream, we have one more day to go, which is tomorrow. Please go to our website, stophatrednow.fi, to see tomorrow's schedule or to revisit some of the conversations that we have had during the previous years. And then one more thing, if you like it, please show it. All of the program is free of charge. So if you think these conversations are important, please help us spread the word. You can share the program, tell a friend, repost our material, or simply continue the conversation in your own communities and organizations. And of course, you can help with filling in this feedback form and helping us know where we did well and where we can do even better. So this has been the day 4 of Stop Hatred Now 2026. My name is Sonja Lindfors, and I'm wishing you a great evening. Take care.